They say focus is just about discipline, but they've never seen what happens when it becomes an obsession. When you no longer scroll, no longer reply, no longer explain yourself. When your silence becomes louder than their noise. This isn't motivation, this isn't hustle, this is war. Mental war, and most people lose before it starts because they can't sit with themselves for more than 5 minutes. You're here because you've already felt it. That need to cut out the noise, that anger when your time gets wasted, that quiet fire inside you when everyone else is distracted, but you're locked in. And maybe people have noticed. Maybe they say you've changed, that you're distant, that you're cold. Good. You're supposed to be, because the habit you're about to learn doesn't just make you focused. It makes you untouchable. It rewires how you think, how you act, how you carry yourself. It builds a kind of mental sharpness that breaks people, not because you try to, but because they can't keep up. And when you start living like this, everything changes, not overnight, but permanently. You will lose comfort. You will lose company. But what you gain is far greater. Precision, power, peace. This isn't a trend. This is a system, one that turns regular minds into cold, calculating, unstoppable machines. And it starts with one habit, but only if you're ready for what it costs. Because this kind of focus, it doesn't come free. Focus isn't just being lost, it's being taken, hijacked, rewired out of you slowly and silently every time you unlock your phone or open a new tab. And the worst part, you think it's your fault. You think you're lazy, unmotivated, or just need more discipline. But the truth is brutal. Your focus is under attack. And it's not happening by accident, it's by design. The modern world is built to break your concentration. Every app you open, every notification you get, every new piece of content screaming for your attention. It's all engineered to fragment your mind. Social media platforms hire behavioral scientists. They run tests. They study your brain like a lab experiment, finding new ways to keep your mind scattered. Not because it helps you, but because distracted people click more, scroll longer, and buy faster. You're not the customer. You're the product. Your attention is the currency. And the more distracted you are, the more valuable you become to the systems that feed on your time. You can feel it, can't you? That itch to check something. The twitch when you're trying to focus, but your brain wants to escape. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. Years of mental programming designed to keep you average, docile, predictable. And the real enemy? Comfort. The soft glow of a screen, the endless stream of content, the small hits of dopamine that keep you busy but never fulfilled. They feel harmless in the moment, but stack up to destroy your ability to think clearly, act decisively, and stay locked in. That's why most people never do anything truly great. Not because they're not capable, but because they've lost the ability to focus long enough to build something that matters. You weren't born scattered. You were born sharp. But they've spent years dulling you, tricking you into trading your attention for distraction, your time for entertainment, your purpose for comfort. And unless you fight back, unless you build the habit that rebuilds your focus, you'll spend your life stuck in mental quicksand, busy, but going nowhere. This is the silent war. It's not loud. It doesn't come with warning signs. It creeps in through your feed, your group chats, your mindless habits. But make no mistake, it's real. And if you don't learn how to cut through it, it will own you. Focus isn't a luxury anymore. It's a weapon. And right now, someone's trying to take it out of your hands. Ruthless focus isn't about to-do lists or waking up early. It's not about fancy apps or color-coded planners. It's about becoming untouchable, mentally, emotionally, energetically. It's the kind of focus that rewires your entire identity. You stop moving like everyone else. You stop needing validation. You become surgical in how you think, speak, and act. Everything around you slows down, not because the world changes, but because your perception sharpens. Think of a sniper, calm, locked in, heartbeat steady, not distracted, not rushed, just waiting for the perfect moment. That's what ruthless focus looks like. It's patience, pressure, and power, all packed into silence. People with this level of attention don't brag about it. They're not loud, they're calculated. Their presence alone makes others feel nervous because they can't be read. They don't over-explain. They don't waste breath. They don't chase small talk. Every move they make has a reason behind it. Look at people like Kobe Bryant, Elon Musk, or Miyamoto Musashi. These weren't just high performers, they were mental machines. Obsessed, cold, focused so tightly on their purpose that the world had to bend around them. People said they were intense, hard to work with, even ruthless, but that's what it takes. They didn't just have goals, they had precision. Everything unnecessary was removed. And this level of focus breaks people, not physically, but emotionally. Because when you move with pure intent, others feel exposed. Your discipline makes them uncomfortable. Your clarity reminds them of their chaos. You don't have to say a word, you're silent. Ruthless focus means you don't let your mind drift during conversations. You don't check your phone every 5 minutes. You don't let energy vampires drain your peace. You protect your time like it's your last asset, because you understand one thing most people never learn. Attention is power. And if you can master it, you can master your entire life. It doesn't mean becoming robotic. It means becoming controlled. You can feel emotions, but you don't let them control your decisions. You can hear criticism, but you don't absorb it. You can be surrounded by noise and still act like you're alone in the room. This kind of focus doesn't show up overnight. It's built, layer by layer, decision by decision. And once you've felt it, once you've tasted what it means to operate in full control, anything less feels like weakness. That's why ruthless focus isn't just a skill, it's a way of being. One that doesn't just elevate you, one that makes the world nervous every time you enter the room. There's one habit that changes everything, not because it's complex, but because it's brutally simple and brutally honest. It's called deliberate isolation with purpose. It isn't about locking yourself away from the world forever. It's about stepping out of the noise long enough to hear your own mind. It's about sitting in stillness with zero stimulation and zero distraction, not to rest but to sharpen. When you isolate with purpose, you're not escaping life. You're confronting it, without filters, without dopamine, without anyone else's noise or opinions. It forces you to face your own thoughts, your patterns, your weaknesses. And that's exactly why people avoid it. Because real focus requires facing things most people run from. Silence reveals everything. But if you can handle that silence and train in it, you build a kind of mental precision that doesn't just give you control over your day. It gives you control over yourself. The purpose part is key. This isn't disconnect and relax. This is strategic silence. You isolate not to disappear, but to reset, recenter, and recalibrate. You sit down, no phone, no music, no scrolling, just you and one question. What actually matters right now? That's the question that rewires everything, because once your brain learns to focus on what matters and ignore the rest, you stop reacting. You start moving with intention, focus sharper. And the sharper it gets, the less you tolerate noise. You stop giving energy to things that drain you. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't think clearly. You don't waste time justifying your path. You just walk it with quiet intensity. Most people think productivity is about doing more. It's not. It's about wasting less. And this habit cuts the waste. The overthinking, the fake urgency, the shallow distractions that eat away at your real power. Once you get used to this kind of solitude, something changes in your presence. You don't look rushed. You don't act uncertain. You carry a calm energy that feels immovable. Deliberate isolation trains your brain to survive without constant input, to think clearly under pressure, to act without noise. And that creates a kind of power that's rare in today's world. A quiet, focused force that doesn't shout for attention, but commands it anyway. Once this becomes a habit, it's no longer just something you do. It's who you become. A person who doesn't just handle chaos, but remains untouched by it. A person who moves like a shadow, but hits like a storm. All because you trained your focus in silence, while everyone else was busy distracting themselves into weakness. When you start operating with ruthless focus, you quickly realize it's not just your habits that change, it's how the world reacts to you. Suddenly, your silence becomes uncomfortable for others. Your precision, your lack of small talk, your refusal to waste time. It all sends a message people don't know how to read. You're not angry, you're not cold-hearted, and you're not antisocial. You're just done wasting energy. But to those still addicted to noise, your focus feels like an attack. It threatens their rhythm, their routine, their sense of normal. Because focus isn't just about getting things done. It's about not giving your time to anything that doesn't serve a purpose. And that, to most people, is unsettling. People don't like mirrors, and a focused mind acts like one. It reflects what others aren't doing. When you choose discipline, they feel their own laziness. When you say no to drama, they're forced to face how much they feed off it. When you disappear to build in silence, they feel left behind. Not because you left them, but because they never moved forward. You break the unspoken contract of comfort, that everyone stays average together. And when you choose growth over company, intensity over attention, people start to pull back. They call you too serious, too distant, too extreme. But what they're really saying is, your focus makes me uncomfortable. Ruthless focus exposes the comfort in others. You become a disruption in their easy-going world. While they look for approval, you look for results. While they talk about what they'll do, you're already doing it. This contrast is hard to accept, especially for those who have built their identity on being liked, being busy, or being seen. Your calm presence, your refusal to explain yourself, your ability to ignore distractions. It all breaks the performance they've been living. The truth is, most people can't handle focused individuals because focused individuals force change without saying a word. You don't have to criticize, correct, or comment. Your actions do all of that silently. And for many, that silence is deafening. You represent what they're not willing to become. You hold up a mirror they didn't ask for. And the deeper your focus grows, the more they feel like background noise in a life that's moving forward without them. But that's not your problem to solve. You weren't built to make people comfortable. You were built to move with purpose, to protect your energy, to break free from the mental chains they still wear with pride. Focus isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And clarity will always offend the unfocused. When you commit to ruthless focus through deliberate isolation, your brain starts to change, not in theory, but in structure. You're not just getting better at focusing, your brain is rewiring itself to operate differently. The noise starts to fade. The cravings begin to shrink. You stop needing stimulation to feel alive. That constant twitch to check your phone, to scroll, to multitask, it begins to disappear. What you're doing is retraining your dopamine system. You're removing the endless flood of cheap rewards and teaching your brain to find satisfaction in silence, control, and forward movement. And when that shift starts, your mind becomes quieter, sharper, and faster. Your attention span begins to stretch. Thoughts that used to slip away after seconds now stay. You start finishing what you start. You no longer feel the need to jump to the next thing. Your brain learns to slow down, hold a thought, break it apart, and rebuild it stronger. This kind of thinking used to be normal before the internet trained you to forget what real focus felt like. But now, you're taking it back, and something powerful happens when your brain isn't fighting off 100 distractions. It begins to clean itself up. You stop thinking in loops. You stop juggling 7 things at once. You start thinking clearly and fast. What you're doing is reducing what's called cognitive load. Too many tabs open in your head slows you down. This habit starts closing those tabs. The unnecessary thoughts, the fake obligations, the invisible pressure. It starts to fade. Your memory also sharpens. Because your brain isn't constantly being hijacked, it starts remembering things naturally again. You stop rereading the same paragraph 5 times. You stop zoning out mid-sentence. The thoughts come in clean, and they stay. That clarity, that awareness, it becomes addictive, but in the right way. There's another thing happening in the background. As your focus sharpens, your brain begins what psychologists refer to as pruning. It starts cutting away the noise, literally. Neural pathways that aren't being used start to fade, and the ones you use more often, the ones that support focus, clarity, action, they grow stronger, faster, more dominant. You're not just learning focus, you're becoming it. The mind you wake up with after weeks of this training isn't the same one you started with. It's faster, calmer, harder to break. You don't waste energy on what doesn't matter. You don't react like you used to. You think, decide, and move with precision. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because your brain has finally stopped working against you and started working for you. When you start building ruthless focus, the first thing you feel isn't power, it's distance. Real focus pulls you away from noise and with it, from people. Not because you hate them, not because you're better than them, but because they don't move like you anymore. You begin to see through conversations that used to entertain you. You feel disconnected from small talk, from meaningless drama, from crowds that chase comfort and validation. At first, it feels like you're losing something. Friends stop calling. People say you've changed, you're too quiet now, too cold. But in that cold, something else starts growing. Control. There's a silence that builds when you spend time with yourself. A silence that teaches you how to think clearly, how to hear your instincts, how to sharpen your decisions without second-guessing. The more you pull away from external noise, the more you begin to hear what you really want and what you'll no longer tolerate. The isolation that once felt heavy starts feeling powerful. You're no longer drained by keeping up appearances. You stop explaining your path. You stop looking for agreement. You move not with arrogance, but with certainty. Yes, there are lonely nights. That's real. There are days when you miss the old version of yourself. The one who said yes to everyone, who laughed just to fit in, who stayed soft to make others comfortable. That version felt liked, but he wasn't in control. He was drifting, playing roles. Now, you sit alone at the table, and every decision is yours. No one tells you how to think. No one pulls your attention. You've taken it back. And the people who stay in your life now, they're not there because you entertain them. They're there because you lead with value, clarity, presence. You're not accessible to everyone anymore, and that makes you magnetic to the right ones and invisible to the wrong ones. The space you've created with your focus becomes a filter. Only those with strength, depth, and discipline can survive in it. Most people confuse loneliness with weakness, but loneliness, when built with intention, becomes the birthplace of self-respect. You stop begging for connection. You start choosing it. You don't fear being alone. You respect what it builds in you, because when you learn to stand by yourself, you become someone no one can knock over. This isn't about cutting everyone off. It's about cutting off the version of you that needed everyone. Focus doesn't just change how you work. It changes who you are. And once you feel the control that comes from that kind of silence, you won't trade it for noise ever again. The first phase is brutal, not because it's complex, but because it forces you to stop feeding your brain the drug it craves the most, dopamine. Every scroll, every notification, every background song you play to focus, it's all part of the addiction. You're not just distracted. You're chemically dependent on stimulation. And when you cut it off, your brain panics. It rebels. You sit in silence and feel the weight of nothing. No escape. No noise. Just you and your thoughts. And for many, that's terrifying. This is where most people give up. They open the app. They play the song. They go back to the noise because they don't understand the power in discomfort. But if you sit in that stillness long enough, something starts to shift. You take back control when you stop reacting. That means no background music during work, no phone within reach, no mindless videos to wind down. You give your brain nothing but silence and purpose, and at first you'll feel slower, foggy, even lost. That's withdrawal. Your system is learning to reset. You're breaking a pattern that's been wired into you for years. But then comes the shift. Your attention span grows. Your restlessness shrinks. You start to find clarity in boredom. That boredom becomes training ground. You stop chasing highs and start building depth. And something wild happens. Your brain starts rewarding you for focus. You finish hard tasks and feel good about it, not because a ping told you it's time to celebrate, but because your own biology realigns with discipline. This phase isn't about quitting everything forever. It's about starving the noise long enough to remember who you are without it. It's about building tolerance for stillness, for slowness, for silence. You learn to sit with tension and stay. No scrolling, no skipping, no shortcuts. When you can go 3 hours with no screen, no sound, just focused effort, you become a weapon. Because now, your mind isn't chasing dopamine. It's creating value. It's building dominance. It's trained to focus. And focus, once mastered, is lethal. This isn't a detox. It's a takeover. And it begins the second you stop feeding your weakness. Focus conditioning is not exciting. It's not dramatic. It's repetitive, quiet, and uncomfortable. That's why it works. You aren't chasing motivation anymore. You're building tolerance for boredom, friction, and silence. This phase is what mental warriors call the cold shower for your brain. It's not about feeling better. It's about becoming harder, stronger, more deliberate. You sit down at the same time every day. You do the same task. You don't wait for the mood to be right. You don't care how you feel. You show up and do the work every single time. This routine is where your mind begins to fracture and then reform. Your brain fights you at first. It whispers, "Skip today. Just check your phone for a second. Do it later." That voice gets louder before it dies, and when you ignore it long enough, it breaks. And that's the moment you start building something different. A mind that obeys you, not your urges. You're not doing this to feel good. You're doing it to become unshakable. Every boring, uncomfortable, quiet session is a rep, like lifting weights for your willpower. You write the same sentence again. You study the same page again. You show up when no one is watching. And slowly, without even realizing it, you become the kind of person who doesn't need hype, doesn't need noise, doesn't need the world to cheer you on. You move on command. It feels like nothing at first, but the results hit hard. When others get overwhelmed, you stay calm. When others lose interest, you lock in. When distractions scream for attention, you don't even blink. Your focus becomes brutal, mechanical, ruthless. You're not chasing stimulation anymore. You're building resistance to it. This is what separates the ones who talk from the ones who win. Not talent, not speed, but discipline inside the dull moments. You condition your mind to stop needing excitement. You train it to function on simplicity, silence, and structure. That's when you stop folding under pressure. That's when long days feel short. That's when hard work starts to feel like breathing. Most people never make it past this stage. It's too quiet, too lonely, too dry. But those who do, they don't burn out. They don't slow down. They operate like machines, but they're human, dangerous humans, controlled, cold, focused. And it all comes from showing up when nothing is happening and doing it anyway. Once your focus is no longer fractured and your brain has stopped chasing noise, something rare begins to emerge. Clarity. Not the kind that comes and goes, but the kind that slices through mental fog like a blade. This is the final phase, precision thinking, where your mind stops being a sponge for random input and starts becoming a weapon of intent. You don't react anymore. You assess, you aim, you strike. Precision thinking is what separates decision makers from the distracted. Most people ask vague questions. What should I do? Is this right? Why can't I focus? But when your mind is trained, your questions evolve. You stop guessing and start measuring. You ask, what creates the highest outcome with the least energy? What's the root of this problem, not the noise around it? What am I doing? In this phase, your brain becomes selective. It filters nonsense before it enters. You stop entertaining useless debates. You no longer chase trends. You build systems, not moods. And because your thoughts are precise, your actions hit harder. One sentence can move a room. One plan can shift your future. One conversation can change how people perceive you. Not because you said a lot, but because what you said was undeniable. This mindset isn't normal. That's why it works. While others are reactive, you're calculating. While they complain, you're adjusting. While they scroll, you strike. You don't spend energy fighting distractions because they don't even enter your mental perimeter anymore. You've created a firewall, not with software, but with discipline. And this is where your thinking starts creating impact. You begin to see patterns faster. You can see through excuses, bad offers, weak mindsets. You make decisions based on principle, not pressure. You don't need time to think because you've already thought through the noise. You're already ahead. Your mind isn't fast because it's chaotic. It's fast because it's clean. That's what precision does. It turns your thoughts into assets. It gives you edge. It gives you time. It gives you power. And once your thinking is this sharp, you don't just walk into rooms. You own the atmosphere, not by talking louder, not by proving anything, just by knowing exactly what you came to do. You won't need anyone to tell you you're changing. You'll feel it in your bones. Your silence starts speaking louder than your words ever did. You don't rush to respond anymore. You listen, you observe, you calculate. The urge to defend yourself fades because you no longer care to prove anything. You're not reactive, you're surgical. You've stopped trying to be understood, and now people chase your attention just to feel relevant again. That's the first sign. The shift from explaining to executing. No announcements, just quiet, deliberate action. Your environment starts to change without you forcing it. People who used to gossip with you stop calling. They sense it, that you've gone cold. Not emotionally, but energetically. Your presence no longer entertains nonsense. You've become hard to reach, hard to read, and impossible to distract. You walk into a room and don't need to speak. The tension shifts. They feel your discipline, even if they don't understand it. You're not triggered like you used to be. That comment doesn't move you. That setback doesn't shake you. That insult doesn't even register. Because your focus is no longer scattered across 1,000 opinions. It's locked on your mission. That internal stillness, that's danger. It's what separates power from noise. You no longer react to energy, you control it. And people don't know how to respond to that kind of stillness. You start protecting your time like it's your last asset. You say no without guilt. You disappear for days without explanation. And when you come back, you're sharper, heavier, more intentional. You don't need validation. You're too busy building something that doesn't require applause. That's when you become dangerous. Not when you shout, not when you flex, but when you no longer need the world's attention to feel powerful. You don't broadcast your moves. You move in silence, not because you're hiding, but because you know real power doesn't announce itself. It just arrives, quiet, unshaken, relentless. That's when people start saying he's changed, but the truth is, you didn't change. You just stopped being available to anything that couldn't grow with you. And now, every step you take feels like it was planned by a ghost and executed by a god. When you develop ruthless focus, the world starts whispering behind your back. They say you've changed, that you're not the same anymore, that you've become cold, distant, maybe even arrogant. And in a way, they're right. Because you're no longer available like you used to be. You don't laugh at everything. You don't show up to everything. You don't explain yourself just to make people feel comfortable. You're not the easy version of yourself anymore. You're the sharpened one. And that's hard for people to accept, especially the ones who knew you before the switch flipped. Before you chose discipline over distraction, silence over approval, power over people-pleasing, you start noticing the emotional backlash. People project their own discomfort onto your transformation. You stop replying instantly, and suddenly, you're ignoring them. You choose to stay home and work instead of showing up to their events, and now you're too busy. You say no without sugarcoating it, and now you're rude. What they don't realize is that you didn't cut them off out of hate. You cut the noise to save your mind. You didn't stop caring. You stopped draining your energy into dead conversations. But they won't see it that way. They'll see someone who stopped playing the emotional games, and that scares them because your new energy doesn't feed their ego. You're not there to validate their comfort zone anymore. You're not replying just to keep peace. You're not pretending to care about things you've outgrown. You've evolved, and that evolution creates distance. Not because you've become heartless, but because you've become focused. And focus has a strange effect on people. It forces them to look at themselves, to question their own choices, to wonder why they haven't grown too. And for many, that's too painful. The truth is, when you start locking in on your goals, your energy becomes expensive. You no longer hand it out like candy. You stop over-explaining your absence. You don't justify your grind. You don't entertain pointless emotions, not because you think you're better than them, but because you know where you're going, and you're no longer willing to be slowed down by people who can't see that vision. So yes, you might look cold, but cold isn't cruel. Cold is clear. Cold is calm. Cold is collected. You're not reacting anymore. You're responding, strategically, selectively, with full awareness of the cost of your time and energy. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. And once you start operating like that, you'll realize something important. Real growth always feels like isolation at first. But that space you create, it's where the power begins, where your future gets built, and where you stop being who they expect, and start becoming who you are meant to be. If you want to sustain ruthless focus, you don't need motivation, you need rules. Discipline doesn't survive on mood swings. It survives on non-negotiables. And if you don't set the rules, the world will write them for you. Rule 1. Control your mornings. The first hour of your day isn't just a habit. It's a declaration of war. If your phone is the first thing you grab, you've already lost. Because the moment your mind starts reacting, it stops leading. You don't check notifications. You don't scroll. You don't wake up to noise. You wake up to purpose. Mornings are your advantage. If you win them, the rest of the world plays catch-up. Rule 2. Protect your inputs like your life depends on it, because mentally, it does. What you consume is what you become. If you're feeding your brain chaos, don't expect it to produce clarity. No random content, no energy-draining voices, no conversations that don't build you. Your mind is a gate. If you don't guard it, garbage floods in, and focus dies quietly. Rule 3. Audit your circle. You can't stay sharp around dull people. If your friends think your focus is too serious, they're not your tribe. You're not cold. You're committed. You're not arrogant. You're aligned. If they can't handle your silence, they never respected your signal. And if they joke about your discipline, understand this: they're not laughing at you. They're protecting the version of you that made them comfortable. Cut that tie. Rule 4. Train your boredom. Focus isn't about hype. It's about enduring the dull moments without breaking. Sit with the silence. Let your brain stretch. No music. No multitasking. Just one task, one goal, one moment. The more comfortable you get with boredom, the less power distractions have over you. And when everyone else needs entertainment just to function, you'll be building empires in the quiet. Finally, Rule 5. Track your time like currency. Stop saying, "I don't have time." Start saying, "That's not worth my energy." Every hour is a trade. You either spend it building or bleeding. You don't just track what you do, you track what it costs you, mentally. Ask yourself every day, did I invest in progress or just survive? Time is the most ruthless currency on earth. Once it's gone, There's no refund. So live like every minute is a bet, and your future is the payoff. If you follow these 5 rules with zero compromise, you won't just stay focused. You'll become the kind of person who doesn't need reminders anymore. Focus won't be something you try to find. It'll be who you are. Relentless, clean, unshakable. 6 months in, you don't recognize the person you used to be. That old version of you, distracted, over-explaining, overthinking, seeking comfort, it's dead. You no longer crave validation. You don't wait for people to understand you. You've stopped asking for permission, stopped checking how others feel about your moves. Your actions speak louder now, and your silence, that alone commands attention. You move with precision. Every decision feels like it's been sharpened by a blade. You're not guessing anymore. You're executing. People start sensing it, even if they can't explain it. They hesitate before wasting your time. They think twice before bringing nonsense into your space. They feel the weight of your presence without you even raising your voice. That's the kind of shift 6 months of ruthless focus builds. You're not trying to be cold. But cold is how you survive when clarity is your compass. You say no quickly. You walk away without guilt. You don't chase closure. You don't look back. Your time is no longer up for auction, and your attention isn't cheap. You've earned this edge through discipline, through silence, through hours spent alone doing what others skipped. There's no need to announce it. Your energy does the talking. Your output becomes undeniable. When you speak, people listen. When you act, people notice. But what's wild? You don't care if they do. That indifference, that's power, real power. You don't scroll like you used to. You don't check your phone 30 times a day. You don't drown in stimulation just to feel alive. Instead, you build. You focus. You operate. You're sharper, quicker, calmer. Not because life got easier, but because your mind got stronger. That's the reward. That's the transformation. You've rebuilt your brain to stop chasing chaos and start mastering control. Now when someone enters your space, they feel it. The stillness, the structure, the seriousness. You're not just another person talking about goals. You're living them. Every move feels calculated. Every second feels chosen. That's the difference. That's what 6 months of this habit does. It doesn't just change your focus. It changes how the world responds to you. You're not forgettable anymore. You're not average. You're not soft. You're cold. You're clear. You're unforgettable. If you've made it this far, you're not like the rest. You don't just watch. You absorb. You don't just listen. You process in silence. And that tells me one thing. You're one of the few. The rare minds who don't need motivation shoved in their face. The ones who crave clarity, not comfort. You already know by now. This isn't just a video. This is training. Quiet, dangerous, unshakable training. For those who are tired of being distracted, tired of being average, tired of being soft. So if anything in this hit a nerve, then prove it. Not to me, to yourself. Subscribe right now. Not because it's a button, but because it's a signal that you're done explaining, done waiting, done wasting time. From now on, you move in silence, and you win without mercy. And if you're really about this, if this content speaks to the part of you no one else sees, then say it in the comments. Not for likes, not for attention. Say it because it's your new truth. Type it with force. Focus is my weapon. That phrase, it's not a slogan. It's a trigger. The kind only the focused few will understand. The kind that separates noise from precision. And remember this, when the world tries to distract you again, when people try to pull you back into softness, weakness, and drama. Stay sharp. Stay locked in, because your mind is now a weapon, and focus is how you fire it.